You're walking through the Amazon. Lush, endless, alive. You see only trees. But under your feet, roads, villages, ceremonial plazas. A civilization that once thrived, now swallowed by green. For centuries, the Amazon was dismissed as too wild, too infertile, too chaotic for anything resembling real civilization. European explorers saw forest and assumed emptiness. Historians echoed the myth that people here merely survived, not flourished. They were wrong. Buried beneath the canopy are the blueprints of lost worlds, networks of engineered soil, river highways, and earthworks so vast they're only visible from space. These weren't scattered tribes. They were societies, organized, inventive, and long forgotten. And the evidence? It's not buried in stone ruins or ancient scrolls. It's in the soil, in the layout of long-lost roads, and in the stories still carried by the people of the forest. So how did they vanish? And how did we forget they were ever there? Today on Armchair Archaeology, we'll follow archaeologists, soil scientists, and indigenous storytellers rebuilding the memory of the Amazon. Stay with us, because by the end, we'll reveal a fun fact that connects your backyard garden to one of the rainforest's oldest secrets. And if you love uncovering hidden histories like this one, be sure to subscribe to Armchair Archaeology. We dive deep into the ancient past, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. For much of the 20th century, the Amazon was seen through a narrow, colonial lens, a pristine wilderness, untouched and uninhabitable. Scholars believed its poor soil and unpredictable climate made it impossible to support large populations. The people who lived there were framed as isolated, transient, and lacking complexity. That idea didn't just mislead academics, it wrote the world's understanding of the Amazon in vanishing ink. But it was built on what couldn't be seen. In the 1970s, as deforestation cleared parts of the forest, researchers began noticing strange geometric shapes in the exposed earth. Circles, squares, perfectly straight lines. Still, it wasn't until the development of LiDAR, a remote sensing laser technology, that the full picture started to emerge. By scanning through the forest canopy, LiDAR revealed massive patterns hidden beneath the trees. In 2022, a single LiDAR survey over southwestern Amazonia uncovered more than 20 previously unknown ancient settlements. These weren't just campsites or scattered villages. They featured roads, central plazas, defensive earthworks, and regional planning. They were part of something coordinated, something connected. What we thought was untouched rainforest was, in many places, a carefully managed landscape, shaped by people who understood it deeply. This is a technological turning point, not just for archaeology, but for how we tell human history. Tools like LiDAR are allowing us to see beyond the assumptions that shaped our textbooks. They're revealing a story that was always there, just hidden under the trees. The myth of the pristine wilderness didn't come from the forest. It came from a failure to see the human fingerprints etched into its soil, roads, and rivers. Now, those fingerprints are reappearing, and they're changing everything we thought we knew. Before European ships ever approached South America, the Amazon was alive with complex societies, thriving, organized, and deeply embedded in the forest they called home. These were not scattered bands scraping by. They were skilled communities who transformed the landscape around them. Villages were arranged in networks, often spaced at regular intervals and connected by causeways or waterways. They weren't placed randomly. Many were organized into regional clusters that suggest planning on a scale far beyond what we once imagined. And they fed these communities not with fragile monocultures, but with polycultures, rotating crops like manioc, maize, peanuts, and fruits in a way that sustained biodiversity and reduced risk. They even remade the earth beneath their feet. Imagine creating a kind of soil so rich and enduring that it still feeds plants hundreds of years later, crafted by hand, not by accident. Across wide areas of the Amazon, archaeologists have found patches of Terra Preta, or dark earth, a soil engineered with charcoal, bone, and organic waste. Unlike the surrounding acidic soil, Terra Preta is still fertile centuries later. That kind of durability hints at knowledge passed down across generations and an intent to build something lasting. If this kind of ancient ingenuity fascinates you, check out our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. From forgotten cities to mind-blowing technologies, it's packed with discoveries that challenge what we think we know about history. The link's in the pinned comment. And it wasn't just soil. In the floodplains of the Llanos de Moxos, ancient engineers sculpted the land into raised agricultural fields, canals, and fish ponds. Seasonal floods became predictable cycles in a man-made ecosystem that turned water into food. These weren't short-term adaptations. They were long-term strategies grounded in ecological intelligence. This wasn't a single empire, but a mosaic of civilizations, interconnected, varied, and dynamic. Their cultures didn't dominate nature, they collaborated with it. Long before European contact, the Amazon was a living map of human ingenuity, resilient, sustainable, and so well woven into the forest that, for centuries, the world didn't even notice it had been there at all. When European colonists finally entered the Amazon basin, they found a forest that seemed untouched. But they weren't seeing what had always been there. They were seeing what was left after a silent catastrophe. It wasn't war that caused the collapse. It was disease. Smallpox, measles, and other pathogens swept through the region well before direct contact, carried along trade routes and rivers. With no immunity, communities were devastated. Some estimates suggest up to 90% of the population died within just a few generations. Entire societies unraveled before a single chronicler arrived to record them. And unlike other ancient cultures that left behind stone pyramids or vast ruins, the people of the Amazon built with earth and wood, materials that vanish quickly in the hot, wet rainforest. Over time, entire settlements dissolved into the ground, their structures reclaimed by soil, vines, and silence. There are no temples covered in vines here. No towering statues or grand tombs remained to catch the eye of explorers or scholars. Just faint mounds, charcoal-rich soil, and paths overgrown with trees. Yet those subtle traces are now telling the story that ruins never could. In a profound reversal, absence became the evidence. Archaeologists long assumed there had been no civilization because they couldn't see one. But in truth, they were looking for the wrong signs. This collapse wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It didn't leave skeletal remains in sunlit plazas. It happened quietly, an invisible unraveling, erasing not only people, but the memory that they'd ever been there. And yet, something persisted. The land itself, altered by centuries of human presence, holds the imprint of lives once lived. What we mistook for virgin rainforest may, in fact, be a graveyard of forgotten cities, already fading by the time the first maps were drawn and still fighting to be remembered. The forest never really forgot. We just didn't know how to listen. Today, the Amazon's past is being rediscovered, not just with high-tech tools, but through stories, soil, and the people who never left. The first clues came from the air. In the 1970s, as deforestation stripped away forest cover, enormous geometric earthworks began to emerge. Circles, squares, and causeways etched into the ground, but their full scale only became visible with the help of satellite imagery and LiDAR. These technologies allow researchers to digitally remove the tree canopy, revealing ancient settlements still hiding beneath the forest. Yet the rediscovery isn't only digital, it's personal. Among the Kwikoro people of the Upper Shingu, archaeologists showed LiDAR scans of long-lost village layouts, rings of settlements, central roads, ceremonial spaces. Kwikoro elders immediately recognized the shapes, not from maps, but from memory. These were places spoken of in stories, long assumed forgotten. The forest hadn't hidden them from its people, it had protected them in memory. The alignment between those memories and scientific data wasn't coincidence. It was cultural continuity. Soil studies, too, are rewriting what we thought we knew. Terra Preta, long dismissed as a natural fluke, is now recognized as widespread, deliberate, and human-made. Its presence speaks of agriculture on a large scale, carried out by people who understood how to enrich the land rather than exhaust it. All of this, technology, science, memory, comes together in a new kind of archaeology, one that doesn't just dig for artifacts, but collaborates with living descendants to rebuild a shared past. What's being uncovered isn't only evidence of lost cities, it's the restoration of voices, rights, and knowledge. The past was never fully buried. It was carried, sung, and remembered. What do you think? How should we balance science and storytelling when it comes to history? Let us know in the comments. We read every one. And now, with satellites in the sky and stories on the ground, we're finally beginning to hear it again. What does it mean to be a civilization? For centuries, history has focused on monuments, stone cities, palaces, and pyramids. If a society didn't leave behind massive architecture or written records, it was often seen as less advanced. But the Amazon tells a different story, one that asks us to widen our lens. The people of the rainforest didn't build temples out of stone. They didn't have centralized kings or walled capitals, yet they shaped their environment with extraordinary precision. They created engineered soil, redirected rivers, managed forests, and built villages in patterns that suggest shared governance, trade, and ceremony. Many of these societies were decentralized. Instead of one ruler or capital, smaller communities were linked through roads, rivers, and ritual centers, like a constellation of towns orbiting a shared cultural sky. Their knowledge was passed down not in books, but through stories, symbols, and the land itself. And here's what's even more astonishing. Archaeological and ecological evidence suggests they achieved long-term sustainability. These people lived for centuries in one of the world's most complex ecosystems without destroying it. They built fertility into the land, layer by layer, choice by choice. They shaped forests without clearing them entirely. In a world where most ancient powers left behind scars, the Amazon left behind resilience. This challenges more than just academic definitions. It forces us to ask, is civilization about power and permanence, or about balance and endurance? The rainforest's past shows us that intelligence and innovation don't always come wrapped in stone. Sometimes they're written in soil, sung through generations, and grown from an ethic of care, not conquest. Maybe it's time we stop asking whether the Amazon was civilized and start asking whether our definitions were ever big enough to hold what was really there. We often think of ancient ruins as things preserved, carved in stone, guarded by time. But in the Amazon, what remains is fragile, buried, and dangerously easy to erase. Today, vast stretches of rainforest are being cleared for cattle ranching, mining, soy plantations, and roads. To the untrained eye, these lands look like empty forest. But from above, many of them conceal ancient roads, geoglyphs, settlements, and engineered soils. To satellites, the land is alive with patterns. To bulldozers, it's just profit, waiting to be cleared. They aren't just tearing down trees, they may be wiping out entire chapters of human history we haven't even read yet. And it's not just archaeological sites that are vanishing. The communities that carry the oral traditions, languages, and ecological knowledge of these civilizations are often the first to be displaced. As forests fall, so do the stories. The loss is not just material, it's cultural, and it's accelerating. But there's a powerful counterforce at work: recognition. As we rediscover these ancient societies, we're also challenging the narratives that ignored them for so long. Recognizing their achievements forces us to reevaluate who holds knowledge, who shapes landscapes, and who gets to be remembered. And that has real consequences today in land rights debates, conservation planning, and climate adaptation. What if the people we once called primitive were among the most successful long-term stewards of their environment? The Amazon's past isn't just a matter of curiosity, it's a warning and a lesson. It reminds us how easily history can disappear when we don't protect it, and how much wisdom we lose when we fail to listen to those who still carry its echoes. Because if a civilization can vanish without stone, steel, or statues, then history isn't as secure as we like to think. It's only as strong as our will to remember it. If you're enjoying the journey and want to help us keep making videos like this, consider clicking the Super Thanks button. Every bit of support helps us bring more forgotten stories back to light. In a rainforest known for poor acidic soil, scientists began uncovering something impossible. Patches of earth so rich and fertile, they could support crops year after year without depleting. These soils, known as Terra Preta or dark earth, weren't natural. They were made. Ancient Amazonians created Terra Preta through a mix of charcoal, bone, food waste, broken pottery, and organic matter. Over time, these inputs transformed barren ground into nutrient-dense, long-lasting soil. Unlike typical tropical dirt, Terra Preta retains moisture and regenerates itself with the help of microbes and biochar. And it still works. In some areas, modern farmers seek out Terra Preta to grow food, centuries after it was last cultivated. This wasn't just a local trick. Widespread patches of Terra Preta have been found across the Amazon, suggesting large, permanent populations who didn't just live on the land, they transformed it. What's remarkable is the foresight behind it. This was an innovation designed not for short-term yield, but for long-term fertility. It turned waste into abundance and scarcity into resilience. It also meant these societies could farm intensively without deforesting new areas, something modern agriculture still struggles to do. And now, after centuries buried beneath the forest, Terra Preta is drawing global attention. Soil scientists, environmentalists, and climate researchers are studying it for clues to sustainable farming and carbon storage. The idea that we could improve degraded land and lock carbon away in the process isn't science fiction. It's a 2,000-year-old idea we're just now beginning to understand. The people who made this soil didn't leave behind written records, but in a way, they did leave a message, quietly planted in the earth, still speaking through the life it sustains. And the full meaning of that message? We'll return to it in the conclusion. Hidden beneath the forest canopy, enormous shapes begin to emerge, circles, squares, and complex geometric patterns carved into the land itself. These are Amazonian geoglyphs, vast earthworks dug by hand, some stretching longer than a football field. From the forest floor, they're nearly invisible, but from above, their precision is unmistakable. First spotted in the 1970s as deforestation exposed the land, these structures became impossible to ignore with the help of satellite imagery and LiDAR. Hundreds have now been identified, particularly in the Brazilian state of Acre. They weren't defensive walls or roads. Many appear to be ceremonial spaces, ritual landscapes aligned with solstices, celestial events, or social gatherings. Some of these geoglyphs are over 2,000 years old, predating the Inca and even the rise of the classical Maya. That makes them among the oldest monumental constructions in the Americas, and yet they were completely hidden in plain sight until just a few decades ago. These structures weren't built with stone or concrete. They were made with shovels, baskets, and human coordination, labor-intensive and intentional. The absence of stone doesn't mean an absence of meaning. In fact, it may signal something deeper, a culture that measured legacy not in permanence, but in connection. In these earthworks, we see a civilization thinking about space, time, and community. The patterns suggest a shared cosmology, a worldview written into the land. Circles and squares may have reflected balance, direction, or ritual power. Their layout tells us that these societies didn't just live in the forest. They envisioned their place within it and used the landscape as a canvas for sacred meaning. Geoglyphs are reminders that not all monuments are vertical. Some lie flat on the earth, measured by the sun, walked in ceremony, then covered by forest until rediscovered by satellites and curiosity. To the people of the ancient Amazon, rivers weren't obstacles. They were highways. With no wheels, no horses, and no stone roads, the river system became the backbone of a vast human network. Dugout canoes traveled across thousands of kilometers, moving people, food, goods, and knowledge. The forest may have seemed impenetrable to outsiders, but for the people who lived there, it was mapped in currents, tributaries, and seasonal rhythms. Archaeologists have found that many pre-Columbian settlements along major waterways are spaced 20 to 40 kilometers apart, just about the distance someone could travel by canoe in a single day. That pattern wasn't random. It suggests deliberate planning. Communities laid out like pearls along the river, close enough to communicate, trade, and support one another. Some settlements were fortified with moats and palisades. Others formed circular clusters around communal plazas. These weren't isolated villages. They were nodes in a broader social network, bound not by empires, but by ecology, cooperation, and mobility. There was no single capital or king. Instead, there were hubs, centers for ritual, exchange, and decision-making, connected by rivers that served as fluid arteries of a living civilization. Trade goods like ceramics, fish, feathers, salt, and medicinal plants flowed along these routes. But so did songs, stories, and shared rituals. In the Amazon, movement wasn't just physical, it was cultural. Civilization is often drawn in stone lines and brick walls, but in the Amazon, it flowed through rivers, rituals, and reciprocal exchange. Connectivity was carved by water and guided by the stars. It didn't need stone to endure. It needed knowledge of the land and the wisdom to move through it. These river networks didn't just link people to each other, they linked ideas, generations, and worlds along pathways as ancient and intricate as any highway carved in stone. If that idea speaks to you, you'll love our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World. It's packed with stories of mysterious cities, lost technologies, and ancient wisdom that still resonates today. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. Long before satellites revealed the hidden cities of the Amazon, their stories were already being told. Among indigenous communities like the Kwikuro, Yanomami, and Tucano, history lives in voice, not stone. It's passed through story, song, and ceremony, carried from one generation to the next. These traditions describe great towns, river journeys, ceremonial paths, and the ancestors who shaped the land. For centuries, scholars dismissed them as myth, but the forest remembered. and so did its people. In the Upper Jingu, when archaeologists showed LiDAR scans of ancient settlement layouts, rings of villages, wide roads, and central plazas, Kwikoro elders didn't just see ruins, they saw memories. Places described in stories, long thought lost, now confirmed in glowing digital maps. The alignment wasn't approximate, it was precise. Some oral histories even preserve details about settlement patterns, clan movements, and sacred functions, details never recorded by colonists or cartographers. This isn't folklore, it's a living archive. And that archive is fragile. As deforestation accelerates, it's not just ancient cities we risk losing, but the voices that remember them. Languages are disappearing, storytellers are being displaced, and with them, a history that can't be reconstructed by excavation alone. The partnership between Indigenous knowledge keepers and archaeologists is essential. It turns excavation into conversation. It restores agency to those whose ancestors once built the forest's invisible cities. These communities aren't relics. They're descendants, living stewards of cultures that endured collapse, conquest, and erasure. Their memory isn't just historical, it's political. It challenges who gets to define the past and who gets to inherit the future. When we listen, truly listen, the forest speaks with two voices, one beneath our feet and one beside us. And together they remind us, not all ruins are built of stone. Some are carried in memory, protected in language, and spoken through generations that refuse to let the past be lost. The Amazon was never empty. It was never primitive. It was full of people, of systems, of knowledge woven into the land so completely that it disappeared not through failure, but through forgetting. For centuries, we looked for pyramids and palaces, and when we didn't see them, we assumed there was nothing to find. But beneath the canopy, there were cities, not carved from stone, but engineered from soil, shaped by rivers and remembered in story. And when we finally learned how to look, the forest began to speak. In geometry, in fertility, in fragments of song. Today, archaeologists, soil scientists, and indigenous communities are recovering a past that was never truly lost, only overlooked. Each geoglyph, each mound, each story passed down is a reminder that we've only scratched the surface of what civilization can look like. And now, the fun fact we promised. Terra, Preta, the Amazon's mysterious dark earth, isn't just a curiosity, it's changing how we think about the future. Scientists are studying it as a model for carbon-negative agriculture. By adapting the same techniques, mixing charcoal and organic waste to enrich soil, modern researchers are developing biochar, a method that improves crops and locks carbon underground for centuries. Your garden soil, your local organic farm, they might already be using principles first developed over 2,000 years ago in the heart of the Amazon. We often look to the future for innovation, but sometimes the answers are buried in the ground, quiet, durable, and waiting to be remembered. Thank you for exploring this forgotten world with us. If you enjoyed the journey, support Armchair Archaeology by liking, subscribing, and sharing. And tell us in the comments, what other lost civilizations do you think deserve to be rediscovered? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the flame of curiosity burning bright.